Okay, we're up to Daf Tzadi Beis Amid Aleph, about 2 lines into the page. We've been talking about the fight between Yaakov and the Sar Shel Esav. So this is a pasuk in Hosea that references that fight. It says, Vayosar al Malach, he fought against the Malach, Vayuchal, and he won. Bacha, he cried, V'yischanin loy, and he davened for him. So it says, he fought and he won. Who's he? It could be Yaakov, it could be the Sar Shel Esav. It says he cried. Who's he? Is it Yaakov the Sar Shel Esav? Says the Gemara, we don't know who won. It just says he won. The question is, who is he? So that's a pasuk in Hosea, which is a little bit vague. Says the Gemara, when you look in Parshas Vayetze, it says Ki sarisem elikim. It says that Yaakov Avinu was called Yisrael because he overcame Imelikim, Emelahim, whatever, is a reference to a Malach. So you see the pasuk Mefurish in Vayishach that he won. Back to the pasuk in Hosea, it says that he cried. Who's he? Who's crying? Then that pasuk describes in Vayishach how that the Sar says, "Please let me go." So you see that obviously the one who was crying was the Sar Shel Esav. The pasuk says that the Malach says that you're going to be named Yisrael because you conquered Emelehim ve'Imanashim, both God and man. Now, so what does it mean? Who's Anashim and Elohim? What is that referring to? The Malach was alluding to the fact that eventually Yaakov would have Sarisa, have Malchus, but there would be two different types of Malchus that would come out of Yaakov Avinu. There would be Elohim, which is a reference like a judge, and Manashim, and people. That's a reference to the Rosh Goyla Shebabavel, the Rosh Goyla that was the leader of Klal Yisrael in Bavel, and Nasi Sheberetz Yisrael, and the Nasi in Eretz Yisrael. So there are different leaders. You have the Nasi in Eretz Yisrael, and you have the Rosh Goyla in Bavel. One is a reference to Elohim, and one is a reference to Anoshim. But the very fact that the Sar Shel Esav is telling him that there's going to be a leader in Bavel, Mekan Remez Lo Golus, it shows you that even he was alluding to Golus, that even in the praise of the Sar Shel Esav, there was an allusion to the fact that there will be eventually Golus to Yaakov. Now, the pasuk says like this. This is a reference to the dream that Yosef interpreted of the Sar HaMashkim. That the Sar HaMashkim said that there was a grapevine, and there were 3 grapes, and he squeezed the grapes. They were ready. He squeezed the grapes, and he brought it to Paro. Now, although that's a story that took place with the Sar Shel Esav, with the Sar HaMashkim, the Gemara understands that it's actually an allusion to a turning point in Klal Yisrael's history. The truth is, if you think about it, Klal Yisrael went into Galus because of that story, right? Because of the Sar HaMashkim, Klal Yisrael went into Galus. Because that Sar HaMashkim led to Yosef being taken, right? He interpreted his dream so that he told Paro. Paro pulls Yosef out of the prison. Yosef goes to power. The Shvatim come down. Klal Yisrael goes into Galus. So this is a big turning point. So the Gemara understands that this 3 grapes was a significant point. And the Gemara is going to offer 7 different pshatim, 6 or 7. The grapevine had 3 branches. There's a reference to the 3 Sari Geim. Sari Geim is basically every generation has 3 very influential Jews. This could be Talmidei Chacham. This could also just be, people who are very close to the senators and the governors, very wealthy people. Every generation of Klal Yisrael has 3 of them. They're the branches because they help, practically help Klal Yisrael. Pa'amim sheshnaim kan ve'echa be'eretz Yisrael. Sometimes the 2 are in Bavel and 1 is in Eretz Yisrael. Pa'am shnaim be'eretz Yisrael ve'echa kan. And sometimes vice versa. Now, Yav Rabbanan Inayu, when the Rabbanan were looking for the 2 in Bavel, they looked at Rabna Ukva, the Rab Nechemya b'nei Barta de Rav. They looked at Rabbana Ukva and Rabbana Nechemya, who were the grandsons of Rav. I guess they're in Eretz Yisrael. Rav Amar, that's the first pshat. So several other pshatim about the dream. This is a reference to the 3 malachim of the nations. We know that every nation is represented by a malach. Every generation, there's 3 angels of different nations of the world that are Malamed Chus and Klal Yisrael. Out of 70 nations, 67 are terrible, but 3 are Melamed Zchus and Klal Yisrael. Tanya, Rav Eliezer says, Gefen Zeha'oil. The truth is the grapevine. The grapevine was an allusion to this world. The Shloisha Srigim, the 3 branches, Ze Avram Yitzchak and Yaakov. That's a reference to Avram Yitzchak and Yaakov. Parachas also Nitza. The pasuk said that they were beginning to blossom. Elu Imois. That's a reference to the Imois. Hevshilu Ashkelesei Anovim, and the grapes were ripening. Elu Ashvatim. So it's a reference to Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, the Imois, and the Shvatim. Amar Rav Yeshua says that's a strange thing. Because think about when this dream took place. This is the time of Yosef at Tzaddik. So normally dreams are like images of what will be. But now you're saying that the dream was really about the Ovis and the Imois. Amar Rav Yeshua, when do they show a person that which was? Normally they only show what will be. Rather, the grapevine is the Torah. Shloisha Srigim, the 3 branches, is Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam, who had not yet been born. Hiparachas also Nitza, the blossoming is Sanhedrin. V'shilu Ashkelesei Anovim, the grapes that are beginning to grow, Elo Tzadikim Shel Chol Dar V'Dar. Okay. Amar Rav Gamliel, a different shot. Adayin Tzricha Anul Midoi. We always need the pshat of the Mudoi. The Mudoi, Rav Elazar Mudoi, he had a different mahalach, and that was Mukum Lakul B'Chan Makom. Rav Elazar Mudoi says, I have a drasha that takes all these components of the grapevine, the branches, the blossoming, and the grapes, but all in one makom, all in Yerushalayim. Gefen's Yerushalayim. Shloisha Srigim Mikdash, Melech, v'Kohen Gadol. The 3 branches in Yerushalayim is the Beis HaMikdash, the Melech, and the Kohen Gadol. The Kabrachas also Nitza, the blossoming is Pirchei Kahana, the young Kehanim, and Evshila Ashkelesei Anovim, and the clusters that are beginning to grow, Elu Nisachim. That's the wine libations in the Beis HaMikdash. A 6th Mahalach, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Mukum Lab Matanos. He says that it's all a reference to the gifts that Hashem gives to Klal Yisrael. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi's Gefen Zatayra. Shloisha Srigim is a reference to the Ber Miriam, the Anani Akovid, and the Mon. Hikaparachas also Nitza Elu Abikurim. That's a reference to the Bikurim. Evshila Ashkelesei Anovim Elu Nisachim. So it's a different Mahalach. A 7th shot. Rabbi Yirmi bar Abba Omar, Gefen Ze Elu Yisrael. The grapevine is allusion to the nation of Klal Yisrael. As we say in the pasuk, Gefen mimitzrayim Tasiya. Shleisha Srigim, the 3 branches of Klal Yisrael, is Elu Shleisha Regalim Sheisol Oilim B'Mechol Shana B'Shana. It's a reference to the Shalosh Regalim. The Klal Yisrael go up every year. Hikaparachas. So if it's a reference to Klal Yisrael, it says there was a blossoming. That means Hikiyah Zman Sheisol Lifrois V'Lirvois. It's a reference to the time when Klal Yisrael are in Galus, but it's time for them to begin to multiply. As it says in the pasuk, Bnei Yisrael Paru V'Yishitzu, that when they were in Mitzrayim, they grew and they multiplied. And he also Nitza, and the fruit began to grow. Hikiyah Zman Sheisol Ligol. It's a reference to Klal Yisrael. The time is for them to go to Geula when they left Mitzrayim. B'chein Oimer, as the pasuk says elsewhere, V'yiz nitzim al bigdai b'chol mabushe agatai. If Shilu, the pasuk says nitzcham, right? Also nitza. Nitza is a reference he's saying to the Geula because it says V'yoz nitzcham, and their lifeblood began to spurt out. B'chol mabushe agatai, and all the garments became dirty. So it's a reference to going out. So it's a reference to the Geula. The last part is Hivshilu Ashkelesei Anovim. The clusters turned into grapes. The Tigiyaz Manshel Mitzrayim Lishtes Kais Tarela. Squeezing the grapes into a cup is a reference to that cup. That's a reference to the ultimate cup of revenge and wrath that Mitzrayim were going to drink when they were destroyed. Behind the Merava, and this reference of Mitzrayim drinking a drink of destruction, that's a reference to what Rava said, that he says, Shalish Kaisis Amuris B'Mitzrayim. The pasuk describes, in this dream, it says the word cup 3 times. That's a reference to the 3 times Mitzrayim will be destroyed. Echad Shasam Moshe, 1 when Klal Yisrael left Mitzrayim. Echad Shasam Me Paranecho. The second was when they were destroyed by the time of Nebuchadnezzar. Then Nebuchadnezzar fought against Paranecho and destroyed Mitzrayim. And the third one, Shasida Lishaysim Kol Yechavim, is the third one is what we're waiting for when Mashiach comes. Amalei Rav Abba Rav Yirmi bar Abba. Ki darish lu Rav lahani kroi ba'gadat hakavos darish le. He says you should know that when Rav darshan the drushes, the psukim he darshaned it like you just did. A last mahalach Rav Shimon ben Lakish. Umazuka gefen nichshal. It's a very, very famous medrash that Klal Yisrael are compared to a grapevine. What does it mean? Every grapevine has different components. You got the leaves, you got the grapes, you got the twigs, all these things. Klal Yisrael has different types. Zemura Sheba, the branches, Elu Balabatim. They're the askanim, as they say, the very wealthy Balabatim, who make sure that there's a tremendous amount of money in Klal Yisrael. They make sure that the government is on our side. They're like the branches because they practically give strength and hold on to everything. Now, Eshkalis, the clusters of grapes, Elu Tamid Chachamim. That's the sweet fruit of the Tamid Chachamim. All in, what are the leaves? You see, the leaves are interesting. The leaves protect the fruit. That's Amaratzim. That's simple Pasha Yidden. They don't taste good, they don't have a lot of Torah knowledge. But practically, they give tzedakah. Practically, they help the society function. And therefore, they're the leaves that protect the grapes. Kanukiyos, now, every single time you have a grapevine, you have these little, they're called kanukiyos. They're like little twisty vines that are not connected to anything. You could really pluck them off. Elu Rikanim Shabisol, they're the sinners of Klal Yisrael. They're also connected. V'hainu d'shalchim is in this reference that the tzaddikim are the grapes, but the amiratzim who help society and help tzedakah and all that stuff, they're the leaves. This is what they sent the message from Eretz Yisrael to Babel. They sent this. It felt like a cryptic message. Liboy rachmim iskoli al aliyah. The grapes should pray for the leaves. Because if not for the leaves, there are no grapes. It's a reference to the relationship that we just mentioned. Now, we mention one more drasha. The pasuk says, a pasuk in Hosea, because we mentioned Hosea before, ve'ekra la b'chamisha aser kesef. On the 15th, ekra. We have to find out what exactly ve'ekra means. The Gemara is going to explain. Ve'ekra means to purchase. That Hashem purchased on the 15th. Purchased for Hashem 15 pieces of silver. What is this a reference to? Rav Yechim Shemashim Tzaddik Ein Kir Lashon Mechira. The Ekra is a lashon of purchase. Shneimar B'Kavri Asher Karisili, the grave that I acquired for myself. So you see, the Ekra is a lashon of purchase. So it's a reference of Hashem acquiring Klal Yisrael when B'Chamisha Asar. That's not just 15 silver coins, whatever, piece of silver. It's also on the reference of the 15th. What's the 15th? That's when we left Mitzrayim. So Hashem purchased us by taking us out of Mitzrayim. And how did He purchase us? Kesef. Kesef are the tzaddikim. That's a reference to what Hashem purchased. He purchased silver. Now the pasuk then says that in addition to purchasing silver, He also bought a chaymer of barley and a lesach of barley. A chaymer and a lesach of barley. Chaymer sayim v'lechsel sayim. Elu arboim v'chamisha. Because a chaymer is 30 saw and a lesach is 15 saw. So it's 45 saw. Hashem purchased 45 saw of barley. That's a reference to the 45 tzaddikim shayil miskayim behem. Even though there's a different measure that says lamed vav tzaddikim. This Gemara says that every generation is 45 tzaddikim that keep the world going. So that's the 45 saw of barley that Hashem purchased. Now, there's 45 tzaddikim. And it's split up 30 and 15, right? Lesach and a chaymer. So it means that there's 30 and 15. Some are in Eretz Yisrael, and some are in Bavel, some in Chutz La'aretz. So either 30 in Eretz Yisrael and 15 in Chutz La'aretz, or vice versa. Any day, Shloishim kan b'chamisha aser b'Eretz Yisrael, Shloisha b'Eretz Yisrael b'chamisha aser kan. I don't know which one is which. I don't know if it's that the 30 are in Eretz Yisrael and the 15 are in Chutz La'aretz, or vice versa. Kishuaymer says another pasuk. The pasuk says, "Ve'echa shloishim hakesef," and Zechariah took 30 pieces of silver. Ve'eshach oisei beis Hashem, and he threw it to the beis Hashem. So you see the reference of 30 being by the Beis Hamikdash. So you see that the 30 tzaddikim are in Eretz Yisrael, and the 15 are Chutz La'aretz. Havem shloishim be'Eretz Yisrael v'chamisha zakan. Rabbi says, the majority of those 30 tzaddikim are found in the shul that's by an attic. Meaning, in other words, they're sitting learning somewhere. You don't even know who they are. And this is what a reference to the pasuk. And Hashem says to the nations of the world, if it's proper in your eyes, pay me, and if not, leave. And they paid Hashem 30 pieces of silver. What is that reference to? some reference of 30 pieces of silver that we said before as payment from the goyim. What does it mean? There's 30 righteous goyim. Pashas, this means tzaddikim musaylim. That means that even the goyim have 30 tzaddikim, that all the goyim are sort of living in their zchus. Ula Amar, a different shot. There are actually 30 mitzvahs b'nei Noach. Pashas is only 7. But the Gemara says there's actually 30 that the goyim sort of accepted, that they gave Hashem. Now, they bring down the art scroll. The Ramami Panu, a big Mekubal, is a Talmud of Arizal. He brings down what they are. He says that it's Avodah Zarah, and it's Moilech, and it's Kishuf. Most of them are connected to Avodah Zarah. It's basically taking the Sheva Mitzvahs but expanding them and making them much more detailed. So these are the 30 Mitzvahs B'nei Noach that the Goyim have accepted, but Ein Miskayim El Shloisha. The truth is, despite the fact that they accepted 30, they only keep 3. As we'll see, the 3, I don't even know if we keep anymore. Achas, go to the next page. What's the 3 that they keep? So the first one is She'en Kaisung Sulas Charm. Even if there's a gay marriage, they don't write a ksuba. So meaning that even if men act homosexually, they don't recognize it as a marriage. Aha. I think I don't know if we, unfortunately, the Goyim have even lost a third of what they do. The second one, Baruch Hashem, this we still keep, that even if there are people that are cannibals and they eat human meat, they don't sell it in the market. You have to know exactly what that means. The last one is that they honor the Torah. Okay, you have to know whether that one's kept too. Okay, the Mishnah said that Gid Anosha doesn't apply to birds. Why? Because it only applies to animals. The way we know this is because the Gid Anosha is the nerve that's found in what's called the kaf. Kaf is where there's a piece of meat that looks like round like a spoon. And because birds don't have that, they don't have that part of the thigh, therefore it doesn't apply. So it says the Gemara, Haka Chazina Dislay. But we see birds do have a spoon flesh area. Let's call a picture. It's by a little bit past the drumstick. So it says the Gemara, they have it, but it's not round like an animal. So they have that animal, but because the pasuk describes it as being round, it excludes birds. What if you happen to have a chicken that has it round? For whatever reason, it's a little bit deformed. Happens to have it round. So does that have a Gid Anosha? I mean, do we say that it's a siba or a siman? In other words, is it that if it has a round, then that's a sign that it has a Gid Anosha? So this one happens to have round, so it's a sign of Gid Anosha, or no? Only a species that's generally round has a Gid Anosha, and because birds are not generally round, birds are out, even if this bird happens to have. It says the Gemara, or the opposite. What if an animal does not have it round? If a cow, that for whatever reason doesn't have a round shape of meat by the Gid Anosha. Do you go by this specific animal or by the species? Teiku, not sure. Okay. The Mishnah had said there was a machlekes, Rav Yehuda and Rav Meir, whether Gid Anosha applies to a 9-month-old fetus that's found in the mother's womb. You shech the mother, you open up the womb, you find the 9-month-old fetus. So Rav Meir holds that the fetus requires its own shechita, and therefore the fetus is an Isser Gid Anosha. Rav Yehuda disagrees. He says, no, you could eat the baby without shechita. There is no Gid Anosha problem. You could eat the Gid Anosha of the fetus. The Mishnah then ended off by saying, Shmuel really speaks out. Amar Shmuel, the Chalvi Mutter Devrakol. Everyone agrees the Chalev is Mutter. Now, what was Shmuel referencing? I mean, it sounds like he's referencing the fetus, the 9-month-old fetus. The machlekes or man of Yehuda is whether you could eat the Gid Anosha of the 9-month-old fetus, but the Chalev, everyone agrees is Mutter. Here's the problem. The same machlekes or man of Yehuda, whether you could eat the Gid Anosha, they also argue whether you could eat the Chalev. So how could you say Chalev Mutter Devrakol? That doesn't seem to be true. When Shmuel said that everyone agrees the Chalev was mutter, what was he referring to? If he's referring to this fetus and he's saying that they only argue by the Gid Anosha, but they agree that the Chalev is mutter, hamiflag polig bey. How could you say everyone agrees? It seems to be machlekes. The Tanya, as the Rabbi says, noyeg b'shlil. The Gid Anosha applies to a fetus. The Chalvay aser, and the Chalev is aser to Rav Meir. So you see, Rav Meir says the Gid Anosha is a problem, the Chalev is a problem. Rav Yehuda says Rav Yehuda says the Chalev is mutter. So they argue with the Chalev. So don't tell me it's universally accepted it's mutter. It's not true. So how could you say that the chaylev is universally accepted that it's mutter? It seems to be a machlokes. So says the Gemara, you're right. When Shmuel said the chaylev is mutter, he was not referring to a fetus, but rather he was referring to every gid anasha. Apparently every gid anasha has fat on top. And Shmuel was saying the fat on top of the gid anasha is mutter. Here's the problem. That's also not so true. There also seems to be a machlokes. Echava de gid. Hamiflek palik bay. Isn't there a machlokes where the chaylev on top is mutter? The Tanya gid anasha, regarding a gid anasha, mechatet acher b'chol makom shehu. Rameir says you have to dig after it wherever it's embedded. And you have to remove the fat as well. Divrei Meir. So you see, Rameir holds that the fat on top of the gid anasha is a problem. Rav Yehuda says Gaim Meshayfer. Rav Yehuda says that actually the fat is mutter, but the fat on top it's marasayin to eat, so you have to just scrape off the top layer. But the fat is bad, so mutter. So you see that Rameir and Rav Yehuda argue about the fat of a gid anasha. So how could you say it's universally accepted? So the Gemara says the truth is Shmuel said that the chaylev is mutter. He was referring to the gid anasha. It seems to be a machlokes where Rameir says it's a problem. Rameir was saying it's only a problem to Rabbanon. I mean, Shmuel was saying is that Minat Torah, everyone agrees the fat on top of a gid anasha is mutter. The machlokes Rameir of Yehuda is whether it's also derabanan. Everyone agrees it's mutter. Minat Torah. Rameir is saying it's also derabanan. But what Shmuel said is correct. Lo'ilam chelvei degid u'moide Shmuel derameir miderabanan aser. Says the Gemara, the Tanya, how do I know that Rameir only holds when he says aser it's only derabanan, but he agrees with Shmuel that it's mutter minat Torah? The Tanya, the shamnoi mutter. The Brisa says very clearly, the fat is permitted. Yisrael Kadoshim Nago B'Yisr. But there's an Issa D'Rabbanan. Who is the author of this Brisa? My love Rameir. He must be Rameir. So you see that when Rameir says Aser, he meant D'Rabbanan. Mutter Min HaTorah, Vasem D'Rabbanan. So you see that everyone agrees it's Mutter Min HaTorah, and Rameir was saying it's Aser. He just meant Midrabbanan. The Gemara says, Mimai, how do you know this? All you see from this Brisa is Aser D'Rabbanan. How do you know it's authored by Rameir? Maybe Rameir holds it's Aser D'Raisa, not like Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda said mutter, maybe he meant mutter min ha-Torah aser d'Rabbanan. Meaning, instead of saying that everyone agrees it's mutter min ha-Torah and Rameir says aser d'Rabbanan, maybe everyone agrees it's aser. Rameir holds aser d'Raisa, Rabbi Yehuda says it's aser d'Rabbanan. So when Rabbi Yehuda says mutter, maybe he means mutter min ha-Torah aser d'Rabbanan. Memai dilma Rabbi Yehuda avlo Rameir mid d'Raisa nami aser. The problem is like this: can't be, because it's your option. Everyone agrees it's aser. Rameir holds Asa Deraisa, Rav Yehuda holds Asa Derabanan. The problem is a Braisa that has Rameir's lashon. It says Mechatet, which was Rameir's lashon that we used before, and it says Mutter Min HaTorah. So it can't be that Rameir holds Asa Min HaTorah because this Braisa Loisal Gadet the Tanya. The Braisa says Gid Anasha Mechatet Acharov. Now that's the same lashon that Rameir said in a Braisa. So that must be Rameir's lashon. B'chol makom shehu b'shamnei mutter, and the shemen is mutter. The fat is mutter. So you see, the Rameir actually holds that it's mutter min ha-Torah and it's only asa d'Rabbanan. Man shamali dislichatita. Who is the one who used this lashon? Rameir. Ikamer shamnei mutter. So you see, the Rameir taka holds, and this is what Shmuel meant, that it's universally accepted that the fat on top of a gid anasha is mutter min ha-Torah. Rabbi Meir is saying is that only asa d'Rabbanan. Just to finish up the daf, Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marta Amar Rav liyasa Torah el knukia shabai. Okay, so you basically have the main gid anasha that is very hard. It doesn't really have much flavor. It's like a piece. It's like a very, very hard. It's like a piece of wood. And then there's branches that come off. So Rav is quoted by Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marta, but Rav holds the actual gid anasha itself is actually mutter because it doesn't taste like anything. It's a piece of wood. Must be when the Torah asered it just asered the little branches that come off, which is counterintuitive. We would assume that the main sciatic nerve is the problem. He's saying no, the main sciatic nerve is mutter because it's not edible. The Torah only asers the soft, edible offshoots of the sciatic nerve. Ula disagrees. He says no. Eitzu, no. HaTorah chayv olav. Ula says the opposite. No. The branches are not asim in HaTorah. It's the ikar sciatic nerve. It's an eitz. It tastes like wood. It's a piece of wood. It's so hard. It's inedible. So what? That's what they're asking. So it's a machlekes Ula and Rav. Amar Abaya kavasi to Ula mistabra. Abaya says, I think Ula makes more sense that the main sciatic nerve is what's aser. Amar sheishes Amar and not the branches off. I'll tell you why. We've been having a discussion about gid anasha. The truth is chaylev, the fats on top of the kidneys, whatever. They apparently also have. There's the main fat, and then there's little branches off. And the psaki is Amr Asi, Chutin shebechelev asur ve'en chayin olav. The actual chelev itself is chayiv kares, but the little branches that come off, that's only asa d'Rabbanan. It's not asa d'Oraisa. So what do you see? When the Torah says chelev, it means the main thing, not the branches. So too when the Torah says ginanasha, it means the main sciatic nerve, not the branches. Alma chelev amar rachmana v'lei chutin, hachanami gid amar rachmana v'lei knukiyos. So it's a raya to ula that the main sciatic nerve is what's asa and not the soft edible branches. That's at most only asa d'Rabbanan. Gufa, just to finish up, Amr of Sheshes Amr Ravashi, we just quoted this, Chutin shebechelev asurin. The threads that come off of the chelev, the little branches that come off, they're asa d'Rabbanan, chelev, but they're not chayiv kares. Now, shebekulya, now the threads that are in the kidneys, apparently each kidney is covered by chelev, and it has little bits of it, little bits of chelev go into the kidneys. So, asurin, those little threads are asa d'Rabbanan, chayin, again, they're not asa d'Oraisa. Now, lubin kulya. Now, the white fat that's inside the kidney, Artska has a picture of like the cut of a kidney. Apparently, the inside of the kidney is covered with a layer of fat. Rabbi v'Rav Chia, it's a machlokes, what is the status of the white fat? Chad aser, chad shari. One prohibits the fat, and one permits the fat that's inside the kidneys, the thick fat that's inside the kidneys. Rabba martitle, Rabba would remove the fat. Rav Yechon martitle, Rav Yechon would also remove the fat of the kidneys. Ravasi goyimle, Ravasi, however, would just level off the top of the kidney fat because it looked bad, but the inside kidney fat he would eat. He held that the fat inside the kidneys is not chelev. So the fat on top is. The question is, what about fat inside? It's a machlokes. Amr Abaya went with this. Kavase, the Rav Asi mistabra makes sense like Rav Asi that it's mutter. The fat inside is mutter. Why? Amr of Abba, Amr of Yehuda, Amr Shmuel. Chelev shabasar chayfa al oisai mutter. The part of the chelev that is covered by meat. In other words, let's say you have a piece of fat that the fat is inside, but the meat is on top. It's mutter. I don't know where the part of the body that is, but I guess by the stomach. Yeah, they have a whole picture that it's, I don't know, it's by the sort of the lower back. There's chelev, there's fat, but it's covered by flesh. Says the Gemara, that's mutter. Why? Because when Torah says chelev, it means exposed chelev, not covered chelev. So too by the kidneys, when it says chelev, it means exposed chelev, not the fat that's inside. So he says, Gemara, Alma shalak salma rachmana v'loisha b'teichak salm. It must be the Torah means the chelev that's on the flanks, not inside the flanks. Hachanami sha'al kuliyas am rachmana v'loisha b'teichak kuliyas. So to over here, the Torah answered the fat that's on the kidneys, not the fat that's inside the kidneys. I will stop here.